Yo, what's up guys, it's Talon, and today we're going to be talking about the best champions in Wild Rift right now to climb. We have about a month left in the season, and so I thought it's a good time to give you guys kind of a final meta report for the season, so you guys can understand what champs you might want to specialize in order to climb this season. Now, I want to make it very clear, to climb this season, you shouldn't just start learning brand new champions a month left in the season. But if you have, say, a champion pool of 3 or 4 champions, and you notice that I say a couple champs are really, really strong right now, you might want to really focus on playing those 1 or 2 champions. So don't learn entirely new champions, because we're too late in the season for that. But if you do want to, know if your specific champions fit really well, or which of your specific champions fit the best into the meta, that's what I'm here to explain. If you guys see a champion not mentioned, just comment below, ask me about it, because obviously I don't mention every champion. Usually the champions I mention, it means I don't think that they're as good as other options. It doesn't mean that I think they're useless or can't be played in certain situations. So definitely feel free to ask about that. And I do sometimes just forget to mention champions. I'm not perfect, so I do that as well. Anyways, with that intro, let's go right into the top lane meta. So right now there's about 4 mega OP champions. There's 2 kind of bruisers, 1 tank, and then 1 split pusher. So for the split pusher that's really OP, that's going to be Fiora. The reason for Fiora is she's just insanely strong, both early game and later on in the game. She outscales nearly everyone. She does really well into tanks and into a lot of the other champions mentioned at the top of this list. She's just insanely strong right now, basically every point in the game. Then we have Garen. Garen is extremely easy to play, takes basically no brain. His lane phase is insane. He has insane sustain. He can one-shot basically anyone later on in the game. And he's really good at locking down an enemy carry while still being mega tanky. So of course he's going to be broken in most metas. Nasus is, in my opinion, very slept on. Not a lot of people think Nasus is a top tier champion, but he still does really well because TP allows him to alleviate a lot of his weaknesses in lane, since he doesn't really have to lane that hard. He can just walk up, take a bunch of damage. As long as he literally doesn't die, he recalls TP's back, and his entire early game kind of weakness is nullified for the most part. And then he scales like a monster without honestly having that weak of an early game. It's pretty hard to punish such a tanky champion in the early game, and of course his wither is extremely OP. And then the last mega OP champion is going to be Poppy. So Poppy is more of that lane bully tank, where Poppy's early game is insanely strong. Poppy shuts down a bunch of champions, does well into champions like Fiora because she can block the Fiora first ability, and then in later on team fights can of course use that ultimate, kind of like a Mordekaiser ultimate, to zone people off of objectives, to make the jungler not able to smite, stuff like that. And so just really good early on in the game at nullifying nearly any carry, and then later on in the game is just solid in team fights, can set up the team well, and has a lot of CC. Some sleeper champions would be Olaf and Kayle. So the reason I say Olaf is sleeper is because I think he's actually strong. Olaf does really well into a lot of these beefier champions. He's good in these long fights into melee champions where he can just run them down, and does pretty well into the meta for the most part. He doesn't do well into Fiora. Don't lock him into Fiora. That's going to be rough. Most of the other champions, like Poppy, for example, great into Poppy. Kayle, I don't actually think Kayle is like objectively strong, in the sense that if everyone played perfectly, I don't think Kayle would be good. However, people suck. And given the fact that people suck, they don't know how to punish Kayle very well. And TP allows Kayle to, similarly to Nasus, alleviate some of that early game weakness. And so I don't mind playing Kayle. I think it's a decent enough champion. And for that reason, I would say if you are especially in a lower to mid tier rank, or you just really like those late game scaling champions, Kayle's actually a solid one to look into. Then when it comes to split pushers, some of the other best split pushers apart from Fiora are going to be Jax, Camille, and Sion. When it comes to tanks, obviously Poppy again, like I said, and then Ornn as well. Those are going to be very solid tanks for the most part. Bruisers are going to be kind of, I'm just going to list off a bunch of bruisers because these guys all have similar strengths. So Volley, Sett, Darius, Aatrox, Renekton, Ambessa, and Gnar. I know I listed a lot there, but when we go to those tanks, or those bruisers, the ones that are really good into tanks are going to be things like Sett, Darius, Aatrox, and kind of Gnar to a lesser extent. And then some of the ones that are going to be better into squishies. So Volley's going to be kind of good into everything, but not as insane into either. Renekton is really solid, mostly into squishies, and then Ambessa is going to be kind of similar, where I prefer them to be a bit squishier if I'm playing Ambessa. And then we have the AP options. So for AP, I would definitely say that right now Rumble, Mordekaiser, and Warwick feel like the overall best, but you also have Gwen and Gragas. So overall, those 5 are going to all be solid AP options if you need some AP. I don't generally think AP feels that strong right now in top lane. I don't really love a lot of the AP champions. I generally would rather be AD when I can, but of course some games you don't want to have full AD. Enemy locks in Malphite or something against you, of course you don't really want to play that. And then, you can play whatever counter picks, but for example, Malphite against full AD, Jace against squishies, these types of counter picks make sense. And then I forgot to mention as well, Yone, Yasuo, and Tryndamere are all kind of good carry top laners. Crit items are pretty solid right now still, even after they got nerfed slightly. And a lot of those champions do really well when you're looking just to purely carry. However, they can have their own issues, but overall, quite strong. So that's going to be it for the Baron lane overall. Now going into jungle. So for jungle, I think Vi is by far the best jungler. She has insanely fast clear speed. She can snowball super well. She's super tanky, does good damage, does good into tanks and squishies alike. Has basically no weaknesses. Like literally strong clear speed, good early game, good late game, good scaling, tanky, damage. Like there's just, this champ is broken. Like I don't know what else to tell you guys. This champ is broken. You should play Vi. It's very easy to play as well. So very broken champion. Lee Sin and Olaf are good bruisers as well. So Lee Sin, especially when they're squishy, he's good in most situations, but especially when they're squishy right now, if you're a good Lee Sin. And then Olaf is really good into tanks. So you can see here, I think Olaf is very slept on. I think this champ is very good top and mid. Definitely a champion that you guys might want to look into learning at some point. He's been strong for a while, and Death Dance being so strong right now is also really nice for him specifically. Zed is going to be an insanely OP AD assassin. His cooldowns are like -2 seconds. I know not all of you are corrupt. This champion is hard to play, but if you're really solid on Zed, I mean, he's by far the best AD assassin. Alongside Lee, you know, you could kind of say Zed and Lee are really similar, but Lee is like more bruisery assassin, whereas Zed is like pure assassin. Need to drink water because I'm talking a lot, but then best AP junglers are going to be Amumu and Warwick. So Amumu is going to be obviously a lot tankier. You can build like tank, but still do a lot of magic damage on Amumu. He has really good clear speed, very good gank setup, very good team fighting, everything like that. Warwick, on the other hand, a bit more snowball-y, a bit more like fight constantly. Doesn't scale quite as well, but he's really good at locking down, you know, the enemy carry or anything like that. But again, those are going to be the two best options for AP, Amumu and Warwick. And then some other bruisers that do similar things to like Lee or Olaf, but just not as strong, would be things like Hecarim, Wukong, Ambessa, Volibear, Riven, Red Kayn specifically. All of those ones are going to be solid, kind of more tanky-ish bruisers. And then again, we have some assassins like Riven, Viego, Nocturne, Nyla, Kha'Zix. I mean, Nyla's more of a carry, less of a, you know, assassin, but Nyla is slept on in my opinion because of the crit. Like again, crit items are really good, but people still don't really play a lot of Nyla. But then if we look into some of the other champions I mentioned there, I would say Viego and Nocturne are really like the assassins I would say are overall the best, / like carry junglers. So Viego and Nocturne definitely extremely good carry junglers, and then the other ones I mentioned, like I said, are pretty solid as well. And then if we go into some other AP options, you can go for stuff like Echo, Lilia, or Nunu. They're all solid. You know, I don't mind those champions. And then Kayle and Nyla, again, are kind of those hyper-scaling junglers. Kind of same thing I talked about Kayle Baron lane. Playing Kayle in the jungle, kind of even better than Baron lane because you can alleviate that weakness of laning because you just don't have to lane. But you still could get punished, and you don't get to gank a lot, so it's not like anything crazy, but it punishes bad players who don't know how to be efficient and whatnot. And then for tanks, again, Rammus, Poppy, Nunu, all of them super strong. Poppy, just insanely broken champion, but not like the best clear. I mean, most tanks don't have the best clear. Rammus is obviously a counter pick into a bunch of AD, and then Nunu is just honestly a pretty solid tank for most games, I feel like, right now. Yeah, that's it for jungle. I'm one-shotting this recording because I'm tired and I want to sleep, so we're just going straight into it. Might take me a second longer to, you know, speak or whatever, but anyways, going into mid lane now. Syndra, still the best. She's been the best for a long time. I mean, if you watch me, you know, you may think I'm biased. I mean, everyone has bias. I guess I am biased to an extent because I play Syndra all the time. But this champion's absurdly broken. She has insanely good laning. She scales insanely well. She's good into squishies and fine into tanks. Doesn't have many bad matchups except for Rayleigh, Yasuo, and Heimerdinger. And yeah, just pretty broken. And so speaking of Heimerdinger, I think Heimerdinger is the second best mid. I think he's insanely slept on. Like, no, this champion, if you just want a champion where you can abuse free elo, it's insanely easy to play, insanely broken, and nobody knows that it's broken. Like, just play Heimerdinger. So the reasons he's broken, he has insanely good laning because his turrets basically mean he can never lose lane. So he always goes at least even in lane. He can't really lose almost any lane phases. He's really hard for champions like Syndra to land spells in because of his movement speed around his turrets. He pushes turrets really fast because of his turrets. He can roam because he can get really easy prio, so he has the ability to roam. He scales not quite as well as Syndra or Ori or whatever, but still really, really well, and has insane burst damage. The only kind of weakness you could say is if you do catch him out as like an assassin or someone who catches him out in a team fight or whatever, he's not super mobile. And so he has that weakness, and that's really it. He doesn't have any other weaknesses because he's pretty broken. Other slept on champions I would say are Zoe, Zyra, Ori, and Singed right now. Not a lot of people play Ori. Obviously, you guys know I play a lot of Orianna. But Orianna is kind of a little bit of a worse version of Syndra, but better into tanks overall. And then when it comes to stuff like Zoe, Zoe is really one of those just kind of like, you have to be pretty good on it to actually get value out of it. But if you know how to play Zoe, permanently winning lane, roaming really well, strong early game, you still scale. Really good into squishies. I wouldn't lock her into tanks, but she's very slept on as pretty much counterpicking at any squishy champion that you see. Zyra is really, really good into tanks, just good lane phase, good scaling, and melts through tanks. And then Singed is just push roam, push roam, push roam, and it's very brain dead and it works really well. So then when we go to the AD champions, Yasuo, Corki, and Yone are all broken AD options. Those are pretty much the AD options I recommend. I don't recommend a lot of other AD options, but if you're playing one of those 3 champs, you're going to be happy. And then Ahri and Aurora are very strong burst roaming AP mages. So the problem with them is they don't just get to win the game for free. If you play Syndra, you play Zyra, you play Heimer, you play Ori, you win the game for free after a certain amount of time. So you just get to do these strategies I've spoken about numerous times on my videos, where you farm and then you just, you know, you're super efficient, you don't care about helping your team out early game, and you just play for your own selfish, you know, need, and you carry. Now Aurora and Ahri, they're not champions who just auto win because they can't just solo carry fights when they get fed. And so they have to understand roaming a lot better. So they have to make sure they're pushing their waves, being efficient while simultaneously roaming, and then finding those opportunities to actually break open the game rather than just only staying in lane 24/7. And so that's definitely the hard part about these champs and why they're not as broken in my eyes, because they have a little bit more, I guess, requirements in order to actually be strong. But if they do meet those requirements, it's not the hardest thing ever to meet those requirements. They will one-shot every squishy champion, and they have really good setup. Like Ahri has really good setup. Obviously, Aurora is more just one-shot you, but very, very good. And then Vex Rise, they're going to counter a lot of these assassins and the champs like Yone and whatever too, and they're going to be solid roaming options as well, kind of worse versions of Ahri, Aurora in a way. Lissandra, Annie, same thing really. More CC though with Lissandra, Annie, a little more CC heavy, so they counter champs a little harder who need to not be CC'd, like Echo, for example. Echo really struggles into those. I think Swain's kind of underrated. He's just a solid champion, especially in the melee comps, but I think Swain is pretty underrated. Ziggs, Victor, and Aesol, similar mages to like Ahri, or not to Ahri, to Ori and Syndra, but just weaker. Jace, Akshan, and Lucian, similar to the other AD options, just worse, but they work if you want. And then Akali, Zed, and Echo, they're decent assassins. Galio can counter some assassins, especially AP assassins. So that's kind of the gist of mid lane. Probably the role I have the most opinions on that differ from other people. But speaking of opinions differing from other people, I'll go on to ADC now, where I don't have most people's beloved Varus as a top tier champion. I will explain why, but first we're going to talk about what I do think is the strongest. That's Corki and Sion. So I think Corki is the strongest because he has absolutely absurd, or Corki got Sion Sivir. I forgot to mention Sivir, but Corki, just insane burst damage. He's good in lane. He's good at all points in the game, and he's good into every type of champ. Good into squishies, good into tanks. Just doesn't really have a lot of weaknesses. His only weakness is his short range, so he can struggle into really high range comps. But if you go Magnetic Blaster second, you alleviate that weakness to an extent. And if you burst down those high range champions by one-shotting them, you're usually fine anyways. So it's not like a huge weakness or anything. But it is a weakness, so just thought I'd mention that. Xayah is a little more specific. She's more good when the enemy are mega aggro, when they're all, you know, jumping on you and they have a bunch of melee and dive. She's not as good in the high range either, but she's still pretty consistently strong and still does fine because right now the items all work really well with her. Like all the items that got buffed in the the crit patch a little bit ago, they're all super strong on her, so she's just really good for that reason. And then Sivir similarly does well with same crit items. Sivir is going to struggle a little less into these ranged champs. She's going to be more consistently strong and just scales insanely well. But again, all these champions are not like insane in a high range comp, so it's not like for ADC, I think ADC is kind of the role that has the most parity within it. I think that there is different champs for different situations. I don't think any one champ is just so far and away above the others compared to a lot of other roles. So then Kai'Sa is also a champ I would say is just really good in most situations. consistently good, can build in many ways, and just works out in most situations as well. If you're looking for other like scaling hyper carries, I mean, you can play anything like Trist, Zeri, Twitch, like these champs are all fine, they're just not as good. But all those champs kind of work as more hyper carries as well. The best like long range lane bullies are the same as always, Caitlyn and Ezreal. They're good long range, good poke, good lane bullies. Lucian is like a short range lane bully, Samira kind of too. Those champions are good. More when you don't need as much range for whatever reason, maybe they don't have counters to long range, whatever, or they don't have long range that counters you rather. And then for counter picks, Misfortune's good if you have a bunch of setup. That's pretty much all I think about when I'm thinking about these other champs that might be strong in certain situations. So if you have a bunch of like Leona or an Alistar Nautilus that can engage for you really well, you can play Misfortune. Looks like I'm about to end the game here, so we're just going to go show you guys the next game as we go in. And then, yeah, I mean, the other champs aren't really, in my opinion, that relevant to mention. And so now we have Varus, who I didn't mention. So Varus is best with enchanters. So if you are going to play Varus, I think he's good with enchanters, especially auto attack buffing enchanters like Lulu and Emilio. When he's with those champions, he is a strong champion. When he's with any other champion, he really struggles. The reason he struggles is because his damage is really hard to get off compared to other champs. So if we're Varus and I auto attack 3 times on the current best build with Varus, which is on hit / mixture of on hit and AP, I don't do any damage. I have to get an ability off afterwards. So I have to actually auto attack people and then also get abilities off. And this just takes a lot more time. And again, he's very short range, so he kind of struggles actually like getting in range. And the difference is he doesn't have mobility. So okay, I struggle with against long range as a Corki, but as a Corki I can very easily get in and out, right? I can W in or I can W out. I have that mobility to gap close or to just walk in, auto attack, and then run away. Varus doesn't have that. He only has his ult. Most people are going to take cleanse, have QSS, have a veil. They're going to have something to block it, and so he's not going to be able to close that gap as hard. And then additionally, he's very easy to catch out when he's fed. So if any assassin or anyone notices, oh, there's a fed Varus, I can just go and one-shot him because he has no mobility, so he's very easy to catch out. That's why a short-range auto-attacking champion with no mobility is going to be extremely weak if people are human. Now, the reality is people play badly. And so I'm not talking about the meta the same way that I say, like, I don't actually think Kael's strong, but I think Kael can be played because people are bad. I don't think Varus is good, but I think Varus can be played because people are bad. And the reason for this is because people don't know how he works. They don't know that if he auto-attacks me a couple times, his damage is going to come from abilities afterwards, like when he's building AP especially, or when he's building a mixture of AP and on-hit. And they don't know that if he gets a kill or an assist or whatever, he's going to get resets. He's going to do a lot more auto-attacks. Like his auto-attack speed is going to be a lot higher. He's going to do a lot more damage to me. And so people aren't really concerned with these types of things. They're not keeping track of, oh, he got a kill. So if like a Master Yi gets a kill in a fight, someone sees a Master Yi, they're like, oh, I'm going to run away, you got to kill. If someone sees a Varus get a kill in the fight, they're usually not thinking the same thing, but you should be. And because people don't understand how this champion works, I believe they have a very false perception of his strength. And so that's basically my rant on Varus. I rant on this champion every once in a while because people disagree with this one more than any other, so I thought I'd explain to you guys in a bit more detail. That's overall ADC though. And then lastly, we have support. So for solo queue, I think that champions like Poppy, Ornn, Thresh, and Nautilus all have insane carry potential, very good engage, very good laning. They're just consistently strong throughout the game, and they have the agency to actually make plays. Whereas in duo queue, champions like Emilio, Lulu, and Zilean all have good playmaking, or all have not good playmaking, sorry. They have they do a very good job of kind of accentuating their teammates' strengths, right? Like, oh, I have a fed, or I have like a good duo queue Xayah player or whatever. I play Lulu or Emilio or Zilean and they can't die / they do a million damage and it's pretty broken. So that's why these champions are better for solo queue, or for duo queue, I mean, sorry, I can't speak. But in duo queue, these champions don't really have the same potential to carry because they just lack agency. Then as it comes to other counter engage champions, so again, Zilean, really good counter engage. Braum is also really good counter engage right now. Again, less solo queue oriented, but still very good counter engage, very good champion overall. Nami and Seraphine are kind of those solo queue enchanters. They have better agency, they can make more decisions, they can do more stuff like that. They're not as team reliant as the other ones I mentioned. Sona, again, is a slept on enchanter. I mentioned it last time, or maybe 2 videos ago, I don't know. But Sona is quite slept on in my opinion. Like, she's actually pretty strong anytime the enemy lock in an enchanter. So if the enemy lock in an enchanter, lock in Sona. Like, you don't want to blind pick Sona, but if the enemy lock in an enchanter, you can definitely lock in Sona and you're going to be pretty happy. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. And then I think some other good champs are like Rakan and Blitz. I think they have Pretty good agency, good ability to make plays, but they're not super hard commit. Whereas engaged champions like Ali or Leona, for example, they're a bit more all in, and so I don't prefer those hard all in champions compared to the the champions like Blitz, which aren't all in, or Rakan. So, and then you can play mage carries like Zyra, Brand, Lux, whatever, but I don't really recommend it. It works, but I don't recommend it. And so yeah, that's gonna be overall it for the meta report video. Kind of went through this one a bit more, just kind of talking rather than going through maybe a bit more detailed, but I still think I gave you guys a decent amount of details around the meta and everything. So again, if you have questions about any parts of the meta, just let me know in the comments, and I'm happy to answer whatever I can. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.